On this episode of the CJ Sweat Show, we're going to talk about the most overrated coach in the NFL. I also have Justin Cates from Inside The ACC joining us today. Should Jay Gruden, the coach of the Washington Redskins, should he be fired? And today is early signing day in college football, so we're going to break down the top 10 classes in college football. It's very exciting, very exciting. Great show today. This is the CJ Sweat Show, and we start right now. I'm not bringing the bias here. You are.
What they do up there? Brainwash?
Hey! It's not my fault that your team is terrible.
Let me explain. No, there is too much. Let me sum up.
This is just honest. I'm sorry if it hurts. Oh wait, I'm not really sorry.
Put that coffee down.
You can't stop! Can't stop, won't stop. Where the bricks at? I give him that diddy bop. Like, take that.
This is the CJ Sweat Show. We are now live and brought to you out of Roanoke, Virginia. Thank you to our good friends at Buyers Auto, the official, unofficial sponsor of the podcast. It is great to have you in on this Wednesday pre-Christmas evening. Oh, it's really good to be here. Christmas in 5 days. A lot of people are taking off this week. I'm not. We are in the heart of the NFL season. We have a lot of things happening right now in college football that's all very exciting. So today is not a good day for anybody to be missing, and I wanted to be here. I am excited about this podcast. We had the craziest day in the NFL. So let's get over the hump of something first before I even get into this. If somebody tells you that the NFL had a terrible day on Sunday, laugh at them. The NFL had a great day. We had incredible finishes starting from the 1 o'clock window all the way to the evening window. We had multiple games with exciting finishes, and they're still being talked about today. This was an incredible weekend from the NFL. And that 4 o'clock game between the Steelers and the Patriots was absolutely incredible. Now, later in the show, we're going to get to something that happened during that game, and you were distracted with that game that you missed what will set the tone in the NFL for the next decade. We're going to get to that later. But for now, I want to discuss something that a lot of you don't like to hear. And that is Mike Tomlin is the most overrated coach in the NFL. Now, before you get all up in arms about it and get all defensive about it, I want to open you up a little bit. So hear me out. Embrace me with open arms, because I am the voice that you need. Colin Cowherd, he's good, fine. Dan Patrick is good, I get it. Rich Eisen, you like him. You like all those guys. Totally get it. But what makes me different from all of those guys is I answer to no one. I am the producer of the show. I am the host of the show. We aren't hired by anybody. We're independent. Everything you see is paid for by me, some by Buyers Auto. Everything you see is put together by me. I have no boss with this. I can talk about whatever the heck I want. If we wanted to swear on the show, we could. Not that we would, but if we wanted to, we could. We answer to no one on this podcast, meaning I owe nobody any favors with this. So I can say exactly what I see. And I see Mike Tomlin as incredibly overrated. Now, again, I want you to understand something. There is a difference between having a really good record and being the cause for that really good record, and having a really good record and being a reason why that record isn't better. Look at the Steelers, because something came out today that should tell you everything you need to know about Mike Tomlin. Today, we had the Pro Bowl rosters introduced. Who had the most players going to the Pro Bowl this year? The Pittsburgh Steelers. They have 8 players going to the Pro Bowl this year. 8. No other team has that many, by the way. The Patriots have 4, 2 of which one of which is a fullback, the other a kicker. And they're mostly on that list because they just simply don't miss games. The other two were Gronkowski and Brady. The Patriots have no defense. Mike Tomlin has been given an incredible roster that features an elite quarterback, the best running back in the league, and the best receiver in the league. I would also argue a top 5 linebacker, Shazier, and I know he didn't play this weekend. But if you look at the Steelers roster, it's incredible. And the crazy thing about it is, it has been that way for years. For years, he has had an incredible roster. Yet, he's 2-7 against New England. He can't beat them. He can't beat Belichick. Every time they are put up against each other, Pittsburgh falls short. Now that game, did it come down to the wire? It sure as heck did. It did come down to the wire. But it shouldn't have. You watched the first 3 quarters of that game. You watched it. Pittsburgh was pushing them all over the field. Pittsburgh was more dominant physically than New England. And you could see it. That's why in the second half, Belichick came out and was like, okay, we're going to do a lot of screen passes, a lot of shorter routes. We're going to do a lot of stretch plays because he knew his offensive line was not going to win that battle. And he knew his linebackers were not going to stop Le'Veon Bell. They couldn't do it. So how in the world did the Patriots come back and win that game? Well, it's quite simple. Mike Tomlin's team, yet again, down the stretch, made a bunch of mental mistakes. Now, you're a Steelers fan, and if you're upset, I apologize. Well, I don't really apologize. But I want to free you today. I want to release your chains today of fanhood. You, as a fan, are under no obligation to defend or attack any coach or player. You're under no obligation. You, as a fan, are free to think as you would like to. You're free to. I'm freeing you today. You as a fan should expect more from Mike Tomlin. Patriot fans, by the way, if they weren't very successful, they would have every right to expect more from Bill Belichick. Panther fans feel like they should expect more from Ron Rivera. Why? They all have talent. Now, if you're the Cleveland Browns and you just simply don't have talent, no, you don't have the right to expect more from your head coach. If you're the Redskins, you don't have a right to expect more from Jay Gruden, given how terrible that ownership is. But the Steelers always draft well. The Steelers never get into bad contracts. The Steelers always find star players when no one else can do it. The Steelers, if you're Mike Tomlin, you have no reason why you can't succeed with that team. Yet, Pittsburgh, with 8 Pro Bowl players, here's what they've done this year. Lost to the Patriots, again, made Joe Flacco look like an elite quarterback, barely beat Andy Dalton and the Bengals. They let Brett Hundley look like a franchise quarterback as he put up 28 points against them, and they barely beat the Colts on the road. Not to mention they played Jacksonville earlier in the year and lost 30-9. At home, they let Jacksonville score 30 points, and they could only score 9. They also lost to the Bears earlier in the year. Now, 8 Pro Bowl players. Is that what you would expect? Losses to the Bears, not a playoff team. Smoked by Jacksonville. They don't have a franchise quarterback. Barely squeaked by the Colts, who right now are trying to get a better draft pick. Barely beat the Packers without Aaron Rodgers. Joe Flacco looked great. Another loss to the Patriots. Shouldn't you expect more? Why, as a fan, do you feel this incessant need to defend Mike Tomlin? And what bugs me about Tomlin is every time they lose to the Patriots, it's always the same way. It's always mental mistakes. You had that game won. You had a pass interference call late in the game, and you started to feel it. The Patriots started to make their move. Patrick Crandall is a Steelers fan. He put on our podcast on Facebook. He had this to say, and I thought it was great, so I'm going to read it. He said, lifelong Steeler fan here. Coaches were unprepared for that final 5 minutes. They coached to not lose the game instead of coaching to win. Number 1, a draw up the middle on 2nd and 23 instead of passing for a quick 8 to 12 yards. Switching to a zone defense for the first time all game on the Pats' final scoring drive. Why did they do this? Scared to give up the big play against man coverage. That final sequence with the spike call and then Haley and Benzier yelling for him to not spike it as the ball is already being hiked Terrible! Yet constant with the Steelers. Consistent with Mike Tomlin. That offensive coordinator, quarterback miscommunication you saw, that would never happen with the Patriots. You might see the Patriots make some mistakes. They never make mental mistakes. And by the way, it should be noted, I went up and I looked this up this weekend, and guess what? I found out that Bill Belichick does not let his players reach across the end zone on a scoring reception like that. If they do, he puts them on the bench, sometimes cuts them. Want to know why? Exactly what you saw with that play. It was within the rules, the catch was not within the rules. As the rules are written, it is not a catch. And also that Derek Carr play that happened Sunday night, where he's trying to make a play across the goal line. That ends up being a fumble out of the end zone. Cowboys ball with a couple points. Belichick doesn't allow it. Does not allow that to happen. He tells his players, you will be benched if it happens. Want to know why? Belichick is detailed. Belichick goes overboard with details. Mike Tomlin, emotional, passionate. And sometimes those things can be good. They can be good, but not for an NFL head coach. And if you're telling me with the talent on that roster, you shouldn't expect more, then you are a lousy fan. You should expect more. Sometimes it's okay to shake your head at the play calling. You're telling me you would rather Big Ben throw a terrible pass across the middle than to spike the ball and kick a field goal and send it into overtime against a team you're physically dominating. You're telling me Mike Tomlin got that one right. I'm telling you he didn't. It's the same coach that stuck his foot out and tried to trip a player. It's the same coach who gets into constant belittling matches with the Ravens and the Bengals. The Steelers are the older brother in the AFC North that constantly has power struggles with their little brother, the Ravens, Bengals, and Browns. You ever watch those AFC North games? They're always a mess. They always end up in fights. It's always way more physical than it ever should have been, and there's always multiple players suspended. Every single time, I swear. Every single time. You don't see that with the Patriots. You don't see it. Now, you will see something like what happened with Gronkowski. Gronkowski's a nut, is a little bit overboard. But Belichick came down hard on him. That will not happen the rest of the season. And by the way, if they lost Gronkowski the rest of the season, well, they won a Super Bowl last year without him. So do you really think they need him? Do you really think that's necessary? I'm just saying, look at the overall picture of the Steelers. And don't just look at the record, because records can be deceiving. Jay Gruden, his record does not look good with the Redskins. Jay Gruden, right now, by the way, Redskin fans want him out of there. That's absolutely nonsensical. That is asinine if you're a Redskins fan trying to get rid of Jay Gruden. Jay Gruden has gone into a franchise with terrible ownership, with a GM disaster that was handled completely terribly. It is a toxic organization. Multiple reports. You saw Dan Snyder get into bed with RG3. You saw how bad that was. And now you're looking at this. And Jay Gruden, that team might go 8-8 at the end of the year. They might go 8-8. That, considering the circumstances, doesn't have a star quarterback. He's never had a great running back there. And always tons of injuries. Considering the circumstances, Jay Gruden's done pretty good. Jay Gruden's has done really, really well there. Yet he's about to get canned. It makes no sense. Don't just look at the record. Look at everything. What is everything telling you? If you have an elite quarterback, if you have the best running back in the league, the best receiver in the league, a good offensive line, and one of the best defenses in the past decade, you should expect more than one Super Bowl. And it's okay as a fan to admit that. You as a fan are under no obligation to defend Tomlin. I was told by multiple people this week that the NFL screwed the Steelers. The answer is no. The NFL did not screw the Steelers. Mike Tomlin screwed the Steelers. If you want to put the blame on anyone, put it on Tomlin. who should have had that team better prepared, who should have had the details mapped out, should have known that. Imagine this, by the way. If you're defending Tomlin, I want you to imagine the CEO of a company, and it's a large company, gives you all the assets to work with, incredible budget, incredible support staff, incredible sales staff, incredible regional managers. Okay? And constantly, that company has issues. Like, not work issues, not necessarily performance issues. Sales are always good. You're always losing to this one team, but there's constantly issues within the workspace. There's constantly people having to get suspended. And then there's always this one organization, you constantly, every single quarter when the sales come out, you're constantly second place to this organization. Would that CEO be able to blame the laws around their industry for their lack of success? Or would that CEO maybe take some of the punishment? I guarantee you, any organization that invested in a CEO would fire him after lack of success over a certain period of time. And I'm not saying Tomlin should be fired, but let's hold off on this Tomlin is a great coach discussion. Because as far as I'm concerned, I don't think Mike Tomlin is that much better than Rex Ryan. And we all know how that went down. Actually, they have a lot of similarities. Everybody wants to grab a beer with Rex Ryan, Mike Tomlin. They're both defensively minded guys. They still don't change, and it's always an emotional train wreck whenever they play a really well-coached, detail-oriented team. It makes no sense. Redskin fans, by the way, want Jay Gruden out. I think that is a huge mistake. If you look at the Redskins, this is the funniest thing. Whenever a coach comes into the Redskins and coaches, whenever they leave, they're always way better off. Like, look at Kyle Shanahan. With the Redskins, incredibly criticized for what they did with RG3. Now, he's one of the most coveted coaches in the NFL. He's got a quarterback, and the 49ers over, the next 2 years are going to be a really nice team. Like, a really nice team. The other coach, I'm blanking on his name right now, but is the coach of the Rams. He has been absolutely incredible with Jared Goff. Absolutely incredible. with the Redskins, criticized at time for his work with Kirk Cousins. Goes to the Rams, and oh my gosh, Jared Goff is a Hall of Famer. It just amazes me. The Redskins have the most toxic organization. They're the most toxic organization, and you're trying to push out Jay Gruden. You let me know who's interested in taking that job. Who are you going to get? You're going to bring back Lovie Smith? You're going to dip into college and find a guy? Because that hasn't worked out too well either. You went and got Spurrier that one time. You fire Jay Gruden, and you let me know what happens. Because I guarantee you, the second you do that, you can give Kirk Cousins all the money in the world. He's not going to stick around. He's going to bolt. That team chemistry will be absolutely destroyed. And you're not going to be able to find a good replacement. It's going to be Jim Zorn 2.0. In fact, you might want to rehire Jim Zorn at this point because that would be a better option than whatever it is you have in mind to replace Jay Gruden with. Keep him around. I'm telling you, there are two teams right now you should absolutely not fire your coach. Browns and Redskins. If you can't look at that situation and realize your coach is completely outperforming where they should be, you've absolutely lost your mind. Okay, so great show today. We have coming up here in just a minute. We have Justin Cates joining the podcast. He is from Inside The ACC. We're going to talk about this early signing college football thing that's been going on today. It's been very interesting. We're going to get into the college football playoff, what's going on with Clemson. It's going to be a lot of fun. We will be right back. This is the CJ Sweat Show.
There's nothing left to say. I know where I'm going. We're starting here today. And you know that right. You know that's right. You know that's right. Yeah. You know that's right. Yeah. You know that's right.
When I was little, I didn't talk for a long time. I liked things to always be the same. Anything new or different would scare and upset me. I was very sensitive to lights and sounds. It was almost like I had bigger eyes and ears than everyone else. so I built secret hiding places where nothing could get in. I didn't like looking people in the eye. It made me feel uncomfortable. I'd throw big tantrums over little things like when my socks didn't match. Sometimes I'd do the same things over and over. Until one day, I found out I had autism. My family got me help. Slowly, I learned how to live with it better.
You can see signs of autism in children as young as 18 months. Early intervention can make a lifetime of difference. Learn the signs at autismspeaks.org/signs. Brought to you by Autism Speaks and the Ad Council.
You know, I am like a complete nerd when it comes to college football and when it comes to recruiting. There's always the National Signing Day, first Wednesday of February. It's one of my favorite things to watch. And now we've got the third Wednesday in December, which has become the early signing day in college football. And I think this is absolutely fascinating because there's been a couple of players that had verbals out to one school today, and they just completely switched, signed with somebody else. Alabama, their class just a couple weeks ago didn't look great. Now all of a sudden their class is back in the top 10, closing in on the top 5. It is all very interesting. So joining me now is Justin Cates, who is the senior editor over at Inside The ACC, also does some work there with Virginia Tech and I think the Buffalo Bills as well. So Justin, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me, CJ.
Yeah, good to have you here. So, listen, let's start off with your Buffalo Bills. They come in, they could make the playoffs. Does that team to you look like a team that could maybe make a run in this thing?
Well, all the math says yes, but being a Buffalo fan, I think I know better. I don't know. This team has overachieved considerably, I think, coming into this season. Most people... there was a lot of talk about tanking, especially after they traded Sammy Watkins and started making other moves. Ended up kind of working out. It's sort of Jordan Matthews didn't really pan out a whole lot, but EJ Gaines has been a valuable contributor. And, some of the front office moves have paid off a lot sooner than people expected. And there have been some curious ways, learning experiences, I guess you'd call them, with quarterback play and some other things, but Sean McDermott has to be in the conversation, I think, for Coach of the Year in terms of, especially if they make the playoffs. I think it'd be a no-brainer. But
that would be the first time since '99, correct?
Yeah, and even just having this team right in that conversation at this point is kind of amazing, really.
I completely agree. Now, what do you make of, earlier in the year, Nathan Peterman went in for, they started Nathan Peterman over Tyrod Taylor, and I'm looking at that, I'm like, what in the heck are you doing? You're in the middle of a playoff race, and you're going to bring this kid in who played at Pittsburgh and just hope he adjusts to the speed of the game on the fly. To me, that didn't make any sense. But as a Bills fan and as a Hokie writer, what did you make of that?
Well, yeah, I always have to put that caveat out there is that I am hopelessly biased towards Tyrod Taylor. I like his skill set a lot, and being a Hokie, I've seen it firsthand quite a bit.
Yeah.
But I just think that his ability to scramble and make plays really masks a lot of the deficiencies with the Bills in terms of the offensive line and pass protection. People who don't get to see the Bills every week outside of this very small media market really probably don't realize that every single game he's doing things that just kind of gets lost in the stat sheet. And so, when they started Nathan Peterman, I understood what they were going for. They needed a jump start. The offense had really kind of cratered midseason. And, now that Tyrod's been back, I think for the most part, you've seen him kind of accept that challenge, and he's pushing the ball downfield a little bit more. The Dolphins game, certainly this past week, he looked great. For the most part, did some nice things, and that's what you got to do if you're going to make the playoffs at this time of year.
No, I completely agree. And, one of the things I think about Tyrod is I don't think he's a great quarterback. I do think he's very limited in what he can do. But I also think if you're coming off of a short week and you've got a game plan for him, it's very difficult because he's so good at escaping the pocket and just finding a way to make a play. So I don't think he'll ever, win a Super Bowl or anything. But I think for right now where the Bills are, he's a really nice quarterback to have. Okay, so the Sunday we had the catch with the Steelers and the Patriots. We had the issue with the Raiders. There was a weird call with the Panthers as well. You looked at the NFL this weekend. What did you make of all the officiating? Did you have a problem with the Steelers call?
I think I tweeted at you earlier in the week. It was the correct call. It's just the rule that kind of is awful in that scenario. I think a lot of people have had that similar thought during the week. It's always tough when a game comes down to one call that gets singled out. Yeah. But, rationally speaking, I always kind of reason it out and say, officiating is incredibly difficult. And I do give them the benefit of the doubt. And, with replay, it is a little more frustrating, I think, when things don't quite go as it seems like they should. But, I don't know. There's so many plays in a football game. It's always tough to say, oh, that's what won or lost it. Sometimes it is the case. It seems like a Steelers play comes to mind. But, by and large, I think they do a pretty good job of a difficult situation.
Well, this has always been my take with referees. In a video game, we expect them to be perfect because we bought a video game. But in real life, where there's contracts on the line, there's going to be some error with these referee calls. And that, honestly, to me, has always been a part of the sport, is you're never going to have perfect referees. But now, we've got a camera angle for, good gosh, it's like we've got a camera angle for everything. If we wanted to zoom in on a fly sitting on somebody's knee pad, we could do that if we wanted to. So I look at it now, I'm like, nobody can see these things with the naked eye happening as quickly as they do, and players are just getting quicker. So sure that some of these calls are going to be bad. Now, I came out earlier in the show, and I don't know if you were listening to the opening rant or not, but I criticized Mike Tomlin. To me, he's 2-7 against Belichick. They always lose games with these mental errors. You look at their schedule this season, they're playing really close games against bad opponents. They were blown out by Jacksonville earlier in the year, and with 8 Pro Bowlers on this roster, I think Steeler fans should expect more out of them. Am I crazy to be calling out Mike Tomlin?
That's certainly a bold take, but I think that's the whole point of having a podcast. I don't know. The Steelers are just kind of a remarkable organization to me, and sometimes it gets a little annoying, I guess, when you hear all the praise for them, but it really is warranted that they're year after year consistently in the playoff picture, usually making a deep run, at least in modern times. And I don't know, maybe Mike Tomlin, if I follow the Steelers closer, does game to game make frustrating calls. I think every coach probably does on a long enough timeline. But, again, he just manages to get those guys, admittedly very talented ones, as you said, 8 Pro Bowlers, I believe. But he always manages to kind of have them generally in the right spot, and just kind of, I think maybe there's, if anything critical, I would say he maybe gives those guys too much freedom, but if they're good enough, that's perfectly reasonable, I think.
Well, listen, I think the Steelers organization is managed really, really well. I mean, you look at what they do in the draft. I mean, some of their draft moves are absolutely incredible. They don't get into bad contracts. Even that one with Le'Veon Bell, I mean, they really kind of twisted his arm on a lot of that stuff. He could have asked for a lot more than he did. I look at what they do. I think it's a really well-managed organization, and I think they have surrounded Tomlin with all of these extraordinary pieces. And if you're going to do that, you should expect more out of him. If this were like, if he were taking, and I hate to use your team, but if he took the Bills and was having this type of success, and they're the second best team in the AFC, constantly in playoffs, and he'd won a Super Bowl with them, I'd have different thoughts. But the Steelers are an organization that for the better part of the last 30 years have had an incredible amount of success regardless of who the coach is.
That's fair. And like I said, maybe if you look at it closer, there really are a few more things that I just don't see. But, at the top, it is pretty cutthroat. So maybe Mike Tomlin does need to go.
Okay, so let's shift to college football because this to me is the interesting thing happening today. We had the early season or early recruiting signing period today, still going on right now. I look at Virginia Tech, and I know you're a Hokie writer. Listen, I look at Fuente. Hokies are back in a nice bowl, potentially a 10-win season if they can beat Oklahoma State. And this looks like a really nice recruiting class. There was some criticism of Fuente throughout the season, but Justin, you got to admit this is impressive, right?
I'm very surprised. And, at this point, behind Clemson and Miami, really the consensus third best class in the ACC, which is, I think, surprising to quite a few people. That was one thing that maybe folks had a question mark about Justin Fuente bumping up another level in competition from Memphis to Virginia Tech is, what kind of recruiting is he going to have? You're going to obviously try and get different kids, a little higher level of athlete, and so far they've managed to infuse a lot of talent. I just always kind of come back to that Gerard Evans pickup at the very end of his initial signing class, and that was enormously important. Yeah, obviously to his first season, and this is another class. I'm looking at Rivals right now. Their rankings, they have the Hokies 14th with 25 commitments, and of course this is going to shift a little bit as guys still. There's a handful of guys still out there not fully attached yet, waiting till the later dates. But definitely an impressive class for the Hokies and an important one as they try to catch Clemson and maybe now Miami too.
Now, sticking in the ACC, people aren't aware of this, but Florida State is completely falling apart. I mean, they bring in the coach from Oregon, and they don't have anybody that is signed today. And right now, this class, according to 247 Sports, has them at 63rd. And I checked Rivals earlier; they're low down there too. Now they only have 8 verbals. Some of these other teams are up to 18 and 20, so they're going to go up. But Florida State right now. This thing doesn't look good. Are you a bit worried that the Seminoles are having this hard of a time recruiting?
When there are coaching changes like this, it can always be a painful experience when it comes to recruiting in particular. I am shocked at the level of turnover that we've seen in the Seminoles class and just in general. It's still Florida State. You'd expect them to be able to assemble something no matter what the scenario is, really. Yeah. Maybe they'll be able to use it to their advantage and get some guys who are undecided again in this kind of the rest of this winter period now. And we'll see what comes together with it. But it's definitely a concern as Willie Taggart gets started there in Tallahassee.
No, I definitely agree. Right now, my most impressive class, I got to tell you, they're ranked 7th. I look at Clemson's class. I am blown away at what Dabo Swinney has done with this thing. Of the top 10 available player or top 10 player rankings right now, Clemson has 4 of them committed today. 4. Now they lost out on Justin Fields to Georgia, but this class to me looks absolutely incredible. Are you I wrote an article about Clemson potentially being the next dynasty. They're recruiting like this, back in playoffs. Is this thing going to continue for a long time?
Boy, they're really rolling right now, and you got to assume that that's going to keep going. Yeah, you're right. I don't know if it's having the big slide and their fancy digs down there at Clemson or what it is, but they're pulling in recruits left and right. And, it really is becoming an Alabama-like scenario in terms of just kind of becoming a manufacturing powerhouse. Yeah. And just churning out NFL caliber talent really at every position. It's hard to see a weakness at this point.
Is there one class or was there one signing today that you saw and it just kind of blew you away? You were really shocked by it. Maybe you highlighted or circled it.
Well, there's, talking about Virginia Tech and Clemson, the KJ Henry commitment was certainly one that I had an eye on because that was coming down to a handful of ACC talent or ACC programs. And whenever there are head-to-head battles in your conference, it's really important to be a competitive, but then to win some of those. And that's one of those things where you look at and it's a very crystal clear picture of where Virginia Tech and Clemson are right now in the race for the top talent.
I completely agree. Okay, let's shift now to the college football playoff, because this thing, just a couple of weeks away from this happening. It starts New Year's Day. All right, so we've got Clemson and Alabama, and then we've got Oklahoma and Georgia. So let's start with Clemson and Alabama. I look at this game. I think Clemson's got an edge, because I think this is one of the weaker Nick Saban teams we've had in a while, but I think a lot of people are underestimating that Alabama offense, and I think they could explode in this game. Now, you look at this one, are you leaning towards one team? Because this one to me is the one that feels like a toss-up.
I agree completely with that. I also am a little more leaning towards Clemson, but not by very much. I think you're right in that Alabama, this team is imperfect, but it's still very much an Alabama team, and it's very much a Nick Saban team, and I think that's a fair assessment that they could explode at any moment. They could just go roughshod in the playoff and win, and no one would be that shocked. I certainly wouldn't. So I do. Well,
they're not going to be able to run against Clemson, though, and that to me is why I give Clemson the edge, just because they're not. Clemson's got one of the best rush defenses in the country, and Alabama teams typically rely on the run. So you're not going to get that in this game,
right? Then, you think about Clemson's defense. I think it's every bit as good. It's right there in that conversation. So I really think those factors will kind of even out. And then, I think Clemson can make a few more dynamic plays downfield.
Yeah. All right. So if you had to pick one in this game, I know you're leaning Clemson. Give me your prediction in this one with score and everything.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, I'm taking Clemson pretty close, like maybe something like 28-24. I think it's going to be a really good game. I think these will both be fantastic games, honestly.
No, I do agree with that. And I'm glad we're not getting Clemson in one game and Alabama in the other, because I think if we did, we'd get another Clemson-Alabama championship.
Which is fun, but 3 in a row might be too much.
Yeah, well, and to me, this game to me is the one I'm going to be completely mesmerized with how each coach attacks this game, because these are the two best coaches in the game right now to me going at it. Okay, so the next game, Oklahoma-Georgia, features two newbies. Alabama and Clemson have made the playoffs for the past 3 straight years. Lincoln Riley and Kirby Smart combined have been coaching for 3 years now. They're both babies as far as the coaching goes. But you look at Oklahoma, they've got Baker Mayfield. You look at Georgia, they got Jacob Fromm, Nick Chubb. just a load of talent there. What are some of the things to watch in this other semifinal?
Yeah, Baker's such a magnetic personality, obviously, and controversial, but he's also an incredible talent. And with the way he's played this year, and in particular the role he's been on lately, it's really hard not to kind of lean to his corner a little bit. But you're right, Georgia with the young quarterback and Nick Chubb behind him is an incredible backfield as well. And, Georgia, I don't know, maybe I didn't pay attention in the offseason, but they kind of took me by surprise just how good they've been.
I didn't anticipate they would be this good. I thought they'd be competitive, but this has been absolutely incredible. I look at Georgia, though, and I do think they're at a bit of a weakness here, because when Jake Fromm has to throw more than 30 times a game, it does not work out for them. They're going to have to rely on Nick Chubb to win this one for them, and I think if it gets into Nick Chubb versus Baker Mayfield, I'm going to lean on the team with the better passing attack, and I think that's Oklahoma. Is Georgia in trouble going into this one because of that?
Well, I think that they're certainly capable, but you're right. I think if it gets into a shootout, that's really kind of what Oklahoma's used to over the last handful of years in that Big 12, and just passing it around, and they're perfectly comfortable throwing the ball 40, 50 times a game if they have to. Yeah.
No, they want this one to be like a 40-35 game. They do not want this one to be 10-7.
Right.
Okay, so pick this one, Georgia, Oklahoma. Where would you lean on this?
I'm going to side with Oklahoma. I think probably something in the mid-30s, like 35-31, something around that.
Okay, yeah, no, you and I are exactly on the same line of thought with this one. I also lean Oklahoma, so we would both have Clemson and Oklahoma in the national championship game. Now, here's my thought process when it comes to picking this one. I'm going to take whoever wins Alabama and Clemson to win the title. Because that, to me, I'm not picking against maybe the best coach ever, and then another one that I think is potentially a Hall of Famer. I'm not picking them to lose to two baby coaches. So I would take Dabo Swinney to win that one, and I think the championship game could get a bit ugly because of the coaching advantage there.
I definitely think I'm in the same line of thought with you with regards to the Alabama-Clemson winner. Yeah, you're right. That's just, as far as battle-tested goes, I mean, you need no further introduction than, well, we won that game.
Yeah.
So I agree. I think that whoever wins that game wins. I don't know if it get ugly. I mean, it's always a chance in a championship game that it just gets out of whack. But I think Oklahoma and Georgia both could be an interesting matchup, we'll say.
Well, I do think Georgia poses the more physical threat. My problem with Oklahoma is they have absolutely no pass defense, and Clemson has a lot of passing weapons. I mean, between Kelly Bryant, those receivers, and that tight end, they can throw the ball if they have to. They are not reliant on the run. That's the one thing I really like about Clemson. But I do think Georgia, with that pass rush and the physicality that we saw they possessed against Auburn, that could give Clemson some real problems. All right, so I would pick Clemson to beat Oklahoma, and I'm thinking it's going to be somewhere like 34-20. Where would you go in that championship game?
I take Clemson as well, but closer. Probably go, say, 28-21.
28-21. All right.
Slightly lower scoring. We'll see what happens, though. I'm looking forward to both.
All right. Well, there you have it. So he's got Clemson also winning. So he and I are both very close with these picks with one another. All right, Justin, appreciate you coming on the show. You've been absolutely wonderful. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you do for the Hokies?
Well, primarily I write for Inside The ACC, where we cover the whole conference. I do a little bit of writing on the side for Fighting Gobbler and write some things for them here and there, but mostly focused on Inside The ACC, where we will occasionally feature content from CJ Sweat.
It is occasional during the holidays. All right. Thank you, Justin. Appreciate you coming on, man.
Absolutely. Thanks.
All right. Bye. That was Justin Cates, the senior editor from Inside The ACC. Really appreciate him coming on tonight. He was absolutely great. So I really do appreciate him coming on. All right, so the next thing I want to get to is the biggest problem right now in the NFL. And it's not the anthem. It's not Kaepernick. It's not TV ratings per se. It's not the concussion issue. It's none of that. The biggest issue in the NFL happened this past week. Jerry Richardson is deciding to sell the Carolina Panthers. And he's doing this over sexual harassment allegations. And you can go read it. I don't need to explain all of that to you. John Skipper also resigned at ESPN this weekend. Now, he did so out of because he admitted to his substance abuse, but there's a lot of things going on with John Skipper, and there's been a lot of reports about the culture at ESPN. I've talked about this, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but like I said earlier, I answer to no one, so you get my complete, unbiased, honest opinion on what is happening right now in football. And that is that the culture is disgusting. This is not a one-time incident. This is the culture of football, from NFL to college to high school. There are two things I've experienced firsthand, and both of which have bothered me. Being a part of sports, and I loved my experience being a part of sports and being a part of politics. And there were a lot of things I liked about being in politics too, but both of which have an incredibly dark side. And that is the sexual harassment and the culture surrounding both. And this here is another example of that. I came out and told you last year when Liberty went and hired Ian McCall, the former athletic director of Baylor, during their issues that they had. I said, I will not support Liberty Athletics until that situation is remedied. Either reports come out and he was found innocent, or he comes out, apologizes for it, and admits exactly what happened. or Liberty gets rid of them. Either of those three options. And I've not been to a Liberty Athletic event since. And until it's remedied, I won't go back. Listen, I'm not saying you should boycott the NFL or protest this or protest that. I don't boycott anything. I don't believe in it. I don't believe it solves anything, despite what people believe. And if you boycott things, fine, that's your thing. But the Super Bowl is coming up. And do you know what event is attributed to the biggest sex trafficking day? You know what the biggest day is for sex trafficking? Most popular sex trafficking day? It's the Super Bowl. And wherever the Super Bowl is held, that place becomes a prostitution ring. Ring maybe not, pub. Becomes a prostitution hub. It is like this every single year. And you can go look up the statistics surrounding this. But it is a culture that is embedded in football. We allow coaches, players, owners to get away with a lot of different things in the name of wins. And it's absolutely sickening. And all I ask is that we don't ignore the issues. I don't know the fix, but I know the fact that Fox Sports and ESPN and every other podcaster, sports radio host, or whatever that isn't talking about what is happening with Jerry Richardson is doing a disservice to you. Because I'm looking at this, and I saw Jerry Jones come out and defend Jerry Richardson, say he's a good guy. And, Jerry Richardson has done a lot for that community, that's for sure. You can go look that up too. But these have come out, and they appear to be true, and he's now selling the team. And by him selling the team, the issues will no longer be talked about. And that's a big issue. The fact that he's cowardly by selling this team. Because now the issues that needed to be discussed won't. And it sickens me. It absolutely sickens me. All right, there is exciting things happening. I talked about with Justin, the college football early signing period and recruiting. This stuff fascinates me. So here are the top 10 classes in college football. Let's get some background music to go along with this, because this to me is absolutely incredible. Let's get some background music. All right, college football top 10 classes right now in the country. So this is right now. This was refreshed just 5 minutes ago. Number 1, Ohio State. Georgia is number 2. Texas, number 3. Penn State, 4. 5th is Alabama. 6th is Miami. 7th is Clemson. 8th is Notre Dame. 9th is Oklahoma. And 10th is Auburn. Now let's put some of this in context for you. Clemson has 4 of the top 10 players in the country. Georgia has 3. Go ahead and mark this on your calendar. The 2019 National Championship game will be Clemson and Georgia. It may be a repeat from this year. Georgia, by the way, has signed 6 5-star recruits, more than anybody in the country. Also, keep your eyes on Ohio State and Texas, who each have 16 4-star recruits. Friends, any of these 5-star players that you hear about, any of them are future NFL players. Like, these 5-star guys don't fall off the face of the planet. Some of the 3-star guys do. A couple of times you'll see a 4-star player completely fall apart. These 5-star guys, though, they're going to be around for a long time. Georgia got 6 of them. Clemson got 4 of the 10 best players in the country. That is absolutely remarkable. Okay, so we're going to end the podcast with this. While you were all caught up with the Steelers and the Patriots game from this past weekend, you missed something. Guarantee you missed it. It was the moment this weekend that I believe will shape the NFL for the next 10 years. We've got our next quarterback. And I don't know if he'll be Brady, but I think he's got Rodgers potential. Roethlisberger potential. We've got our next guy. Did you see what Jimmy Garoppolo did? Winning his 3rd out of 4th game with San Francisco. Absolutely incredible. With 3 minutes left in the game, the San Francisco 49ers took a lead 22-20 after a field goal. Then with a minute to go, Titans drive all the way down the field, and they regain the lead, 23-22. So Jimmy Garoppolo is given 1 minute and 4 seconds on the clock. 1 minute and 4 seconds. He had a perfect passer rating on that last drive. It was an absolute incredible drive. He didn't miss a throw. They go all the way down the field. And as time expired, Robbie Gould, the 49ers kicker, kicked the winning field goal to win the game for San Francisco. And it will change the NFL because now the 49ers have their quarterback. The Rams have their quarterback. The Seahawks, as you saw this weekend, with a huge, huge loss to the Rams this past weekend, the Seahawks are now falling apart. And so you're not going to see it this season, frankly, because the Niners are already out of playoffs. But I guarantee you, next year, you want to know who's going to dominate the NFC West? It will be the Rams and the Niners. Seahawks are going to be down at about 8-8. They're going to be down at 8-8. Pete Carroll, at some point soon, I believe, will retire because they've got too many emotional issues with that team. You saw this kind of starting to happen a few weeks ago, and now they are starting to implode. Meanwhile, the 49ers have their guy. Rams have their guy. Cardinals very well could get their guy in this year's draft. And you know Pete Carroll does not like having to play against these other offensively really great offensive minds that are coming over to the NFC West. And Bruce Arians may be stepping down from the Cardinals, meaning another good coach could come into this division. In which case, the Seahawks, this thing's over, baby. This puppy, it's done. And I know you got Russell Wilson. I like Russell Wilson. But you are not competing with what the 49ers have going and the Rams have going. Those two rosters are built. They've got good coaches. Oh, and now they've got their quarterback. Saw that this weekend, and I'm telling you, that will shape the NFL for the next 10 years. Congratulations, 49ers fans. Because this is good. You thought Kaepernick was good those couple years you had him. Oh, boy, you got your guy. And it's going to be great. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch the 49ers come back as a franchise. All right, great show today. Great show. Appreciate all you all leaving comments on Facebook. It is hard for me to read your comments throughout the course of the show when I'm by myself. So we will be back next week. Chris Mason will be back with us. We have got our fantasy football league, by the way. The championship between Ben Neal and Chris Mason happens this weekend. So we'll keep you up to date on who wins that. And we are donating half of the proceeds from fantasy football to Turning Point. Battered Women's Shelter in Roanoke, Virginia, so we are happy to do that for them. That's going to be a fun to watch out this weekend with that fantasy football championship happening. Again, appreciate Justin Cates coming on. Absolutely incredible today. The stuff he gave us for ACC, Buffalo Bills, the NFL, really, and you can't say the NFL and expect it to encompass the Bills and the Browns. They're kind of like in their own separate category, slightly better than college, but not quite the NFL, I would say. But I do appreciate him coming on. Again, we will be live next week. This is the CJ Sweat Show. Have a good night.